Hi guys, welcome back. Um, Sorry about having to split it up into parts. YouTube only lets me do about 15-minute clips at a time. So we're picking back up with the lesson plan. High school, you should be back in and involved by this point. So again, talking to 7th grade wins as well as high school wins. Taking a look at the lesson plan. Okay, you're going to see that it has standards and objectives, review the treble and bass clef, and how to count in 4/4 time. For my high school folks, this may seem really remedial, okay, but I ensure you occasional review of fundamentals like how to count properly and really knowing your note names to the point you can read them on a page as easily as you read a book are extremely important to advancing as a musician. Okay. Um, so you're going to notice it lists all of the things you need. Some days we may have to go back to materials from the previous lesson. So always check that box where it says resources and supplies. And you may have to go back to a previous day to get that worksheet. Okay. So your first thing that you're going to focus on doing, okay, and you can do it right now, is you should have a bell ringer sheet. It looks just like this. Now, most of you have had to do an exercise like this where you get a paper and you have to write the note name out underneath each of the notes. You're going to notice that I made some notes saying that I only want my trombone and baritones to worry about this bottom line, obviously because it has a bass clef. Okay, if you are one of my treble clef folks, then I want you to worry about the top line because it only has treble clef. So that's going to be my saxophones, my clarinets, and my trumpet folks. Okay, so take a quick minute, pause the video, complete it right now. Okay, so the whole point of this bell work, as seemingly easy as it might seem or it might not, is just to see what do you remember of reading your note names. Some of us may think, oh, well, that's super easy, but then you have to think about it and go, well, what is that note actually called? And down the road, we're gonna have to also remember, oh goodness, what buttons do I push down? Okay, so if you did fairly well on this, then the following parts are going to be fairly easy. So if you look on the part where it says teach model, okay, it's going to say teacher will explain how note names work on the treble clef staff and the bass clef staff. So your next sheet should be this one, okay? For you guys, there are going to be certain sheets that are front and back, so yours will look like this. I have mine split up into 2 separate pages just so the writing doesn't show through it when I work on this with you guys. Okay, so we're going to work this real quick before we worry about jumping into counting rhythms. Okay, so let's start with our treble clef folks. So again, this is going to be clarinet, saxophones, and trumpets. Whenever we read music, this goes for bass clef and treble clef, we always start with the bottom line. Okay, we read bottom to top. We don't read top to bottom. Okay. In this case, you would almost have to think of it as if when you opened a book, you read starting with the bottom sentence of the page and read to the top. Okay, so some of you may remember from when you started band, whether it was last year, my 7th graders, or back in 6th grade, high schoolers, long ago, I know. Okay, and you may remember a saying like, every good boy does fine. Okay, so that's something you can write in on the bottom of yours. All right. Now, all we have to do is we take it and we apply it to our lines. And hopefully this isn't going to be hard for you to see. But if it is, I do apologize. Okay, so the first letter of each of those words made out the lines, starting from the bottom going to the top. So we have every good boy does fine. E, G, B, D, F. Okay, now for my treble clef folks, you really don't need a saying for the spaces, okay, because the nice part is it just spells face, okay? So you just fill in the letters in between. Okay, so the cool thing, so we have F for the bottom space, A for the second, C for the third, and E for the top or the fourth space as we refer to it. But take a look at this. As you look at the lines and the spaces and you think of them as being the next step, okay, like as if you were walking, okay, you have E is the bottom line. Well, think about the alphabet. What comes after E? It's F. So that's the bottom space. Well, the next step would be going to that second line. Well, what comes after F? G. Okay. Then we have to take another step and go to the second space. Now in music, we only use the first 7 letters of the alphabet, so naturally, we go back to A, and then it just continues. B, then C, then D, then E, and then F. Okay, eventually we'll talk some more about reading notes that are both below and above the treble clef. But if you can remember things like every good boy does fine, and face, you should be set. Now, I will say real quick, another saying that I like a lot, and this is one that some of my elementary students came up with several years ago, is they used to tell me, elephants get big, dirty feet. And I have to agree. And I like it a lot better than this, but this is even what I was taught in 6th grade, so it's still what I use. Okay, so now I need my bass clef, folks. Okay, it's still the same principles. We still read from the bottom line going up to the top line, not top to bottom. Okay, so it is a little bit contrary to reading a book. Now for you guys, you can use a similar phrase. You can go with good boys do fine always. Okay, a little blah for me. My personal favorite is grizzly bears don't fly airplanes. Okay, I always like the ones that are a little more interesting and often animal related. Okay, so again, you're going to take what you're seeing as the first letter for each word, and that's what your lines are going to be. Okay, so our bottom line is going to be a G. Okay, second line is B, third line D, fourth line F, and top line or fifth line A. Okay, so G, B, D, F, and A. Okay, now for the spaces, you guys don't have it quite so easy with just the word face. So there's two phrases that I like to use. One is all cows eat grass, or all cars eat gas. Now, depending on what grade level you're in, one of these might be a little more relatable than the other. Okay? Or if you happen to own a car and your family owns cows, both of them are relatable. Okay? But that being said, now we fill in our corresponding spaces. So you have bottom space is A, second space is C, third space is E, and the top space or fourth space is G. So second space, first space A, second space C, third space E, fourth space G. Okay? Think about the order of your alphabet again. Sorry, I thought somebody knocked on the door. So you have G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and then we start back again at A. Okay, it goes in order. If you get confused and you forget, oh man, what's that note name for the second space? But you know that this bottom line is G, all you gotta go is, well, G, A, B, it's C. Okay? So learn your note names, folks. This is easy to memorize. It's at least just the first 7 letters of the alphabet. It's not all 26. Okay? You memorize this, life gets a lot easier. And then we get up here and down here and life gets a little more difficult again. Okay? So that being said, take it, go back and check that work while you're at it. See if you missed any. Okay? All right, so we've done the whole guided practice. If you take a look at it, we've done the guided practice where a teacher and student write the note names on the treble clef staff and bass clef staff together. Okay, so you should have been doing that with me. Okay, and then later on for your independent practice, okay, you're going to have your first big note naming sheet. Now notice I put a line right in the middle, okay? Again, this is just to separate it out for my treble clef folks and my bass clef folks. Okay, so if you're trombone and baritone, you're going to take care of this bottom portion of the sheet. Treble clef folks, you're going to take care of the top portion. It should be extremely easy to fill it in now that you have filled in. Come here. Now that you've filled in your other sheet. Okay? So, if anything, I'd almost challenge you to time yourself and see how little time it takes you to do it. Okay? All right, so now we're going to kind of change gears and we're going to start talking about rhythm. Okay? For those of you that are in my high school band, we may have talked some about how we're writing in rhythms and things like that. We focused more on that in the last couple of years with the beginner bands because we've changed it probably from what you learned when you were in beginner band. Okay, so let me find a cap to this real quick. Okay, don't need my good marker drying out. All right, so if you take a look again at the lesson plan, on the Teach Model section, it says teacher will explain the counting system for lesson 1 rhythms. So this is where this sheet comes into play. Make sure when you have this sheet out though, that you're on the lesson 1 side. This one is copied on 2 sides, so you don't want to be on lesson 2 if I'm explaining lesson 1. So make sure you're on the correct side. Okay. So, taking a look at lesson 1, and notice at the top it says your teacher will explain how to tap your foot to a steady beat. Your foot will go down and up to the pulse of the beat. Counting is written in for you to get started. Notes are written with big numbers, while rest use small superscript numbers with slashes. Superscript is just a big word. It's just referring to how the numbers are typed. You're just going to notice that they're really small and they're a little bit closer up to the bar line than the bigger numbers are. Okay, so using a metronome, you're going to say each quarter note counting aloud, but you're going to count the rest in your head. Okay, all right, go on to part 3.